Hello, and welcome to What Moves Us, the podcast where we ask what moves us, or more accurately, what's going to move us in future.
We look at debates, themes, and decisions of the minute that will impact on the way we get about in the future.
Hi, Johanna.
Hi, Liam. How
How
are
you doing?
things?
Well, they are good. I am feeling productive, so all good.
So, what have you been doing this afternoon?
Well, it may or may not be relevant to when this podcast goes out, but I've been packaging up our most recent report on skills beyond sale, the latest in our Small Voices series, Small Voices, Big Talent, uh, about skills beyond scale, and it's about the skills in our membership. We did a podcast on it that is out this week, depending on when this podcast goes out. So I have written a cover letter and will be posting copies to various senior people in politics to get them to get on board with our message, which is look down at the supply chain to the grassroots, because that's where all the skills and talent can be found, and ideas for the future.
Well, it is relevant because what are we talking about today?
I don't know. I can refer to what we're talking to today because I received an email from this afternoon, which is always a surprising email when you send me an email with the title line of where have
How
we
to be
got
a
it?
startup in rail. I was trying to do a trendy. I was trying to think of a
Feedbacks.
trendy way to say how to be a startup in rail. And I haven't. I think we need a little sort of like acronym or something because we love an acronym in rail. So I was trying to think of how a bit like Spotty or something like that. So that we could refer to that rather than just how to be a startup in rail because this is part of our new series, and I want you're talking about the skills that our startups have, but also this is about giving skills to startups and sort of like how they can learn.
Yes, you do realize that we do have a brand called Startup Rail. In fact, the limited company of the Rail Innovation Group is called Startup Rail.
I know. And we're finally getting around to telling everybody how to be a startup in rail.
Almost like we're doing what we were designed to do. So, Johanna, even though we have a couple of podcasts already gone out under this banner, but that was more about how good startups can understand sort of the background to some of the challenges they face. We're now going to start a couple of episodes on material information that they can use and act upon or inform their decisions. So, what's the theme today?
So, well, it's going to be more than a couple of podcasts. It's going to be a theme. So today's theme is actually we're taking you right back to grassroots. So what we're going to talk about is some of the challenges, what funding is available, and why it's an exciting time to get into rail. So why is it exciting to get into rail? Why should startups be looking at it, Liam? Because we've both got experience in being startups. We've been doing Rail Innovation Group and Startup Rail for a long time. So what's different? What's new?
New, I guess, is that we're going through a period of reform in rail. We also have a government department about technology, and we have, I think, noise is coming out of government. That means that they now understand the current context, so can plan for improvements in future. I think, coupled with that, wider world goings on means that there is now a reinforced focus on technology and using assets as best as possible.
And why is that important to government now?
Because there's very little money, so we need to be more efficient, and technology generally brings efficiencies for two things. Wider scale is that the widespread adoption of language models means that people are now more comfortable with the idea of AI. Agents are sort of coming out of the woodwork as the next thing to get on board with and understand, and I think the small companies are best at responding to these. It seems like every single day, other than there being chaos in politics, is that every single day there is a new sort of technology or idea or thing you have to get to grips with or understand. And again, the small companies can do that, I think, faster and embed it into their product development. And also, all of these are opportunities.
So that's why it's a good reason to get into rail because our ecosystem is a hotbed of all the skills, all the experiences and all the development that government needs and also that rail needs as well. So we can, so our members and we can help with, sort of like that push to digitalization, improving the passenger experience and the decarbonisation. So if we wanted to get started in rail, how do we go about it? Because I want to know, do we want to talk about how you get into rail or should we talk about some of the challenges first? Because I know we find challenges and many of our members find challenges.
Um, yes, but I would guess that we're already in rail, so we actually know that the challenges exist.
It's
Ah,
interesting because I think it is, I mean, we both have our own startups as well. And we've got lots of experiences. But I think even if you know how to navigate your way around it, it's still challenging though, isn't it?
yes. And the timescales are much longer. I was going to say, just going back to the thing you said earlier, why the time is right for startups, I would say is also because there is a what's the word? A very strong desire and theme of just get things done. Which, if you're a startup, is music to your ears because you want things done and you don't want to sit in existing, uh, what do you call it? Existing timescales and frameworks. So,
But do you get a feeling that that's translating into rail just getting things done?
well, uh, it's good that the encouragement is coming from ministers, whether it's going into the day-to-day running of the railway and building for the future is a different question. But at least the ambition and appetite is there.
Because I think there might be a bit of disconnect there between what is happening, so politically, you've got ministers saying just get things done. But that actually seems at odds with the rail reform, which train operators and rail industry are just waiting for something to happen. And I guess to a certain extent, in that time, everybody's being micromanaged. And I know I'm talking about the franchise and the industry as a whole, but is that being translated into the supply chain? Is just getting things done happening in the supply chain?
I would say that there is tolerance that I would say actually, no, it's not just getting done at the minute because it's in a transition period. I think people are very optimistic that the new structure at British Railways are or for 75% slash two-thirds of the network will be Great British Railways. Um, there is a optimism that that will allow people to get things done because there'll actually be decision-making processes, responsible people, and a clear direction. And at the moment, there are not really any of those things. So micro small things are getting done and low hanging fruit, but it's just the nature of this weird transition of waiting for the change can't come soon enough.
I guess that's an extra layer of complexity on sort of like because we already have an industry culture, where it's dominated by the big players. And I think I saw something on LinkedIn today that sort of like was showing the CP7 program for Network Rail, where work going to SMEs was less than last year, and is being dominated by the big players. But I guess also with so it's a risk averse culture. It's conservative. So how do startups break in? How do they overcome that culture?
Well, I would say that it's not necessarily the worst thing if it's going to big companies. As much as I'd like startups to be engaging with the rail industry, I can't imagine Great British Railways going to be that comfortable with dealing with 3,000 startups. Whereas if work is farmed to tier one large companies who then are more able to deal with startups and engage with startups for their projects, that might be a route to actually accelerating adoption of startups.
I guess that was the point of this piece that I was reading. That was saying that the tier ones there's no trickle down economics in the fact that they're just doing the work themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, or evidence would show that they find a startup who can do it and just buy the startup. If you're a startup and you want to sell your company, that might
So
be
that's
an exit
so
route.
that's your exit strategy once you've been sort of like through, like
Make something that
you've
rail need
discovered
and
your
done over
product
by you.
and that. Yeah.
Uh,
So it is really difficult to enter the market because it's complex. Tier ones dominate it, they can afford to buy you because it's easier, but what if that's not your game plan? What if you want to carry on developing that? Because we do have success stories within Rail Innovation Group who do, you know, they do get in at the grassroots level and they're building into successful companies. So what's their route been?
Well, that would be a challenge if we're going to talk about startups, because most startups have external investors who want their money back. So they do want the startup to embed, scale up, grow, and sell so the investor can get a return on their investment. That is kind of what startups
Yeah.
design. That's how they come about. If there's someone who wants to be a small business, go into rail and stay in rail for a long time, I'm not sure that we should probably have a different category of companies because they're trying to do something else.
So we've got two different types of startups, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got the startup that
We need a whole nother series. How to be a
well,
small company who really likes rail, who wants to stay in rail.
we'll deal with all of this as we go through the series. So we've got the startup that, has the exit strategy. They've got investors, they want to, they want to get into rail, scale up, as you say, have an exit strategy. Investors get their money back and they go off and do another one. And, they get their money as well, maybe become millionaires, start another startup. Yeah. And then you've got ones that you've got people that want to be in for the long game as well. But also, we have members as well that have started new startups out of their original idea as well. So I think, maybe we should explore, sort of like, how you get into funding, what types of funding that is available in
Yes.
order to do that to start off.
Well, I guess the first message of that is if you were to go to an investor who's unfamiliar with the rail sector, you would have to first manage their expectations that things just take longer in rail.
Yeah, and I think that's difficult for an investor, because sort of like one of the resources that is available, regardless of whether you have a grant or not, is Innovate UK. They can give you advice on funding and they can give you advice on where to find it and that, and they have a good resource for that. But the average investor is looking for a return within 3 to 5 years.
Hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like choosing the right time to approach an investor, and I guess that's really where some of the research grants that you can get can be so good, or whether it be through Innovate UK or some of the train operator ones that are run, like Transport for Wales or the LNER Labs one.
Well, yes, also because they're grants, so you don't have to give away any of your company.
Yeah,
I'd imagine that the amount of money that is smaller, but you don't have to give up part of your
but
company.
but they're a good starting point to give you some initial seed money in order to do some more development work, to engage in industry. Because a lot of these, what's good about a lot of these funding routes and grants and that is that also it means that you get to test with customers or with the operator, and quite often with the first of a kind one, for example, you have to partner with somebody in the industry, so it's a good introduction.
Yes. We will come on to, I guess, the public backed funding, the structure of it. I'm ready with my very, very bright pink slash magenta document from 2 years ago that we published a report, which I'll come on to, um, called Improving the Innovation Funding Ecosystem. But just before that, what you've described, though, is a industry funding people testing and trialing new startups and technology in their own industry. So that, you none of that is going to be disruptive because
Why is that?
it's people in industry choosing who they are acting as the gatekeeper for who gets funding because they have to partner with an existing operator or they have to appeal to various statements, ambitions of the funding bodies, but that will never be disruptive because it will be something that people can accept in their industry.
So have you never seen anything that's been disruptive come out of any of these schemes? I mean, like, it's been, let's go back. What's definition of disruptive?
Oh my god, do you want me to look
What
this
do you
up?
mean?
Do we want me to look this up?
Well, you can do, because the only reason I'm thinking, why does innovation have to be disruptive? Because I guess innovation's a very trendy word, shall we say, particularly within rail. And what do we mean by it? Do we mean it has to be disruptive, or do we mean it has to be improving? Because I think on one level you're right. It's not disruptive,
Yeah.
depending on how you define it, because some of the things that would probably benefit passengers the most haven't been touched. So, I'm going to mention that word, fares and ticketing. That was 3 words, fares and ticketing,
Mm.
or gate lines, or any of those sorts of things, or, things that, matter to passengers, I guess. But then on the other hand, would you say that some things have been disruptive? Sort of like,
Well, this is quite interesting. I just asked chat for what's the definition of disruptive innovation, and it's
yeah.
actually come back with the description, with the definition of a disruptive company.
Oh, who's disruptive?
Well, I mean, it says for a smaller company with fewer resources successfully challenges established industry players, and by introducing a product or service that is initially simpler, more affordable, or more accessible, over time, this is innovation improves and eventually displaces existing market leaders. That's an innovative, it's a disruptive company, I would
Yeah.
say. That it doesn't actually mention the tech is disruptive. Disruptive tech would be something, oh, let's ask it.
So do we know? So it didn't give a name of a disruptive
Oh,
company.
no, these just,
Like, you could say,
but what?
that
Oh,
you
sorry.
could
Can I?
say that Trainline was a disruptor.
Which disruptive company or innovation?
Both.
What's their innovation? I mean, I agree they're a disruptive company, but what's their innovation?
Well, I think they're the only ones that allow you to pay Apple Pay for a ticket and not have to keep, signing in and putting in your credit card and things to buy a ticket on an app. I know it doesn't sound particularly
I feel
disruptive,
they need
but
to say other services are
it
available.
really, but going back to your gatekeeper thing,
But I actually don't know if the other third-party ticketing retailers do accept Apple Pay.
they may do. I don't know.
But that would be a value add. So disruptive technology refers to a new tech that significantly alters or replacing existing technologies, industries, or ways of doing business. It often starts
So,
with limited adoption, but eventually reshapes markets, making older technologies obsolete.
so
Well,
in
let's
some ways, you could say some of our members that are involved in monitoring track are disrupting the industry, because these are things that have either been done by people or have been done by the yellow train, or something, and they've disrupted the industry, and that, or not disrupted the industry, they've made a process better, and monitoring is better
yeah,
because of the technology they've introduced.
yeah. But I imagine going back to what you just said, what we said before, if you're going to get grant funding for that, you'd need someone to accept that that could be a thing in the first place.
Right, okay, so grant funding is not perfect. So what does the report say that we released?
We have some summaries. I'll tell you the 6 summary steps. Conclusion, next steps. I have to just double check so I'm not missing out a key bullet point for you. No, it's so bright pink. Yeah. Challenges, conclusions, and next steps. To consider whether the current assessment methodology for grant funding supports commercially responsive innovation. That would be because uh, the market aspect of grant funding may be open to some revisions. To consider the consistency of scoring and transparency of scoring approach. Again, so let's come back to that one, number 2. I'm going to come back to number 2 in a second. I'll put my pen next to it. A register of whether the register. Here is a one which is a challenge at the moment as well. A particular challenge is that technology is moving so fast that the people who are having to assess whether these new products are worth grant funding may or may not actually understand the technology underlying the products that are coming to them. And
That's kind of related to point 2 as well, isn't it?
yes, well, yeah. So
Which we're
point
going
2
to
is
come which we're going
do
to come
you
back
score
to.
products consistently? Point 1, yeah. Do you score them consistently? Because but to do that, you have to understand all the products. And
Yes.
I don't. I mean, I struggle to understand some of the stuff underlying particular bits of tech. So I imagine most people on these scoring panels or judges, whatever else, probably are more aware of other things. So there might be a bias towards already understood and already accepted technologies. And then we've got one about whether grant funding for rail also, I know this is one of an interest to yours. Does grant funding in the rail and transport industry support wider policy goals? And I guess the only other relevant one is improve, well, basically, score it, actually. Reevaluate how success is measured, aligning much more to commercial outcomes. Because you see a lot of this grant funding going on, but you don't ever see like 3 years later what's happened.
No, and I think I mean, I think they've tried to do that, but I think the problem and is that you do go off a bit of a cliff at the end of it. If you haven't got something that is immediately investable at the end of it, and you don't want to give away your company to investors, or people don't understand the product, then it is difficult to go to the next steps. So I mean, so just going back to sort of like, the points you're sort of like raising about transparent and consistent scoring. I mean, like, we've both submitted applications for grants, so we've
Mhm.
seen the feedback.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think I would say the feedback is random.
I would agree.
Yeah,
Random is the generous term.
yeah. I mean, I think, some of it is very good.
I genuinely think that it's so random. It's acting upon any feedback is actually quite difficult because you have half the people say it's really good and half the people say I don't understand it, and there's not really a lot you can do with that.
Yeah, and I think also it's also really because I've done a lot of submissions. So I think, I've certainly done, not just for my own business, but for other businesses, and also for when I've been part of industry as well, where I've probably done as many as 2 dozen grant submissions for Innovate UK,
Yeah.
and I probably have a 30% success rate, which is probably quite high.
Okay.
But you try and learn from the feedback, and sort of like, analyze and that. And I don't really know how crucial, how important the analyzing is because you think, oh well, I'll fix that next time I do it. But then the randomness of the marks, you fix something and then they sort of like say, well, no, you know, that's wrong, and even though that's not changed from the last time or whatever, it is quite interesting.
Well, I mean, I don't want to. I would let's not go to moan of the month. But
No.
what I was going to say is that I think as a outsider to industry, it might be a bit frustrating that some of this grant funding is based on the quality of the application and your ability to write English prose versus what you're actually offering to industry.
Yeah, I w I think that's right, but I would also say that, within these as well, it's really important to prepare. That's my because so often, when people are asking for advice, um, people will come to me a week before and say, "I'm thinking about putting this in," and that a week is not enough. If you think that you want to put an application in, I would say be thinking about it now. Don't just wait for the competition. Think about, sort of, how you want to craft it, what the stories you're going to tell, where you're going to be marketing, what your business plan's going to be, what your exit strategy is going to be, because that is, how you're going to add value to UK PLC, because they're all the things that they want to see in an application. So, yeah, you can only put your best foot forward, but you must prepare. So, whilst, do appreciate, that different evaluators have different views on what you put, you know, you can overcome that negativity and still get a good score, but they are highly competitive.
If I didn't know better, I might suspect you were touting for bid writing business there, Johanna. Wow.
Certainly not.
Here's your 30% success rate. Um,
There might be other writers out there who have more success than I do.
Other writing services are available.
But I'm not bad at bid writing.
Right.
But it's not my favorite activity to do.
No, actually, you do raise the point there. If you had like a standard pitch deck and standard offer to market, and you went through either, and you took that to either an outside investor, a grant funding organization, a like a space to rail type wider funding body, or straight to an accelerator or something, I wonder if there is any evidence of which one of those, as a straightforward commercial offer, is the one that is more successful.
Yeah, there probably is. I mean, because pitch decks are meant to be standard, because Innovate UK do offer services on how to develop your pitch deck, and that's it. So you do get that support and that. So what else can people do? There's got investments. We've got research and testing facilities. So there's a lot out there.
Going to events is probably the most helpful thing you can do, because sitting at home writing beats or grant funding, as you obviously need to have that prepared, but you cannot match going out and speaking to people, because people in rail are quite candid and will tell you a lot of the issues that you're going to face, but also a lot of the things that will save you time. And as part of the Rail Innovation Group, we advise our members, membership services are available, to of the most efficient ways for them to try and get into rail. And some of the structures and organizations are not particularly fast. And if you're a startup who wants to get things done quickly, there are organizations you can target.
So that was what I was going to focus on, the final
Oh,
messages.
the
Actually,
back page of our report is about
the
membership.
importance of networking. And how do you get into networking? By joining the Rail Innovation Group.
Yes. Now, a question for you, given that you're remote up in the middle of nowhere,
I'm
is
not remote in the middle of nowhere. I'm sat in my hotel room in the middle of London.
oh, wow, you didn't even tell me you're around. What would you advise people of a startup is how much of their budget so they, I mean, just a sort of allowance of traveling to conferences? Because a lot of them are in mainland Europe, usually in winter, annoyingly. But you can spend a lot of money going to everything. What should people be spending across the year? Should they do one big event or 6 local ones?
Well, you see that's almost a challenge, and I think it is for a future podcast almost.
Answer the question.
I know, but the reason why I say that is because it's not a simple answer. Because traveling to events is really easy, and I guess on one level, you could try and find the free ones, but events are really expensive. The travel and the hotel is cheap a bit. But if you think, some events can cost you, 1,500, 2,000 euros to attend. and that's a lot of outlay for a startup. That's kind of what you're up against. So my my advice is don't necessarily think in terms of expenditure, but think about who's going to be there, what your strategy is, who you want to meet, and why it's important to go there. So, so as part of, you know, what we did, I was sort of, I mean, like, I think we went to about 4 conferences, and took the hit on the travel and the money as part of our overall strategy within the funding that we were receiving. And it was because we wanted to engage with people that were designers that were involved in, we wanted to speak specifically with one operator, and they weren't returning any emails or phone calls or whatever. So being at the conference and waiting for them to come off stage because you knew they were going to be there made it a lot harder for them to say no to us. So I think and as I won't say who it is, but there is one operator who says that I pester in the nicest of ways until they eventually said yes.
Right.
So I
Okay.
think that's I think
Encouraging
that
people
is
as
I
well.
think that's what is you have to work out what your game plan and your strategy as to why you would go for the conferences. Whilst, it's important to network, if you can go to free events, go to free events because, there are a lot of them out there. But if there's specific ones, I won't mention which ones they are, but if there's specific ones where there's going to be key people there who you want to network with, then I think the investment is worth it. And remember, join Rail Innovation Group and engage with conversation.
Thanks for listening to another episode of What Moves Us. We hope we moved you. For more episodes, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel.
Till next time.